Welcome to Learn Commerce PU online classes. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe our YouTube channel for all the updates.
Welcome to our second PU online computer classes. Now, we are in the last concept of inheritance. The concept is the constructor in derived classes. Why? Because till here we completed the constructor in base class only. Now, the concept is, you should note about this concept. Why? Because the concept is the constructors in derived classes. Okay. So, here some of the, why? Because we know that I am not going to start first of all from this concept. I want to tell about the meaning of constructor. As we know that the constructor is a special member function and that is used in classes to initialize object of the class automatically. That means to give some value to the object. So this is the meaning of the constructor. So whatever I completed still here, just only applicable to our constructor only. Still here I not started about the in derived classes here. Or in simple words we can say that the constructor play an important role in initializing the object. That means to give some value to the object here. So we did not use this concept earlier. The concept is the constructor in derived classes. Why? Because I already said still here just only we completed about the constructor in base class, but about the concept is the constructor in derived class. Still here we did not use this concept earlier for the sake of simplicity. Why? Because if you are using such a concept, we need to make some of the changes, we need to remember some of the note in this case here. So still here we not use this concept for the sake of the simplicity, but one important thing to note in constructor in derived classes is that now as long as now base class constructor take any arguments, that means if no argument in our base class constructor, no arguments are there, then derived class need not have a constructor function. So clear this point. So this is the first note about our constructor in derived classes. I set one note. The note is the as long as the base class constructor take any arguments, okay, if any base class not having any arguments here, then the derived class need not have a constructor function. Clear this point here. Why? Because I already used one example. Why? Because in our base class I completed one constructor function here. If you are completing one constructor function in base class, then you need to continue such constructor function in derived class also here. But in case of the base class not having any constructor function, then it not possible to construct any constructor function in derived classes. So clear this point here. So again I am repeating, as long as no base class constructor take any arguments, then derived class need not have a constructor function. But however, if any base class constructor contains a constructor function with one or more arguments, then it is compulsory for the derived class to have a constructor function and pass argument to the base class constructor. Clear this part here. Why? Because I already said if no in our base class, if no base class constructor function is there, then it not possible to construct such a function in our derived class. But also if any base class have some of the constructor function with some of the arguments here, then it is compulsory or mandatory for the derived class to have a constructor function and pass argument to the base class constructor. Now what about this one? I said one line about this one. Why? Because to have a constructor function, and it is compulsory for the derived class to have a constructor function and pass arguments to the base class constructor. Why? Because you should remember while applying inheritance concept, okay, the inheritance concept means by using one base class we are going to construct the derived class. So this is the concept of the inheritance, or maybe by using many base classes we are going to construct one derived classes. So whatever, but here just two classes are going to construct, or maybe number of classes are going to construct, depend on the type of the inheritance in this case. Clear this one? But in this example I want to tell just only about our single inheritance, and we know the meaning of the single inheritance. If a class is derived from a single base class, that means here one base class is there, one derived class is there. Clear this point here? So why? Because here we can say that why? Because we are in the concept about our, if any derived class, base class have a constructor function, then derived class should have some of the constructor function, and it is compulsory. That means while applying the concept of inheritance you should remember it, the derived class pass argument to the base class constructor. Why the derived class pass argument to the base class constructor? Why? Because you should remember while applying the inheritance concept here we are going to we usually create the object using derived class, not the base class. Clear this point? Why? Because in last example also, or in last class also, I already said why? Because the class A is that by using the class A we are not going to create the object. By using the derived class, maybe by using next class we are going to create the object. So like that only, maybe the base class constructor is that if you have the base class constructor, then it is compulsory we should use the constructor function in our derived class, and such a object are going to declare by using the derived class, not the base class here. So clear this one? Because of this reason it is compulsory for the derived class to pass argument to the base class constructors. Clear this point here? To the base class constructors in this case here. And finally we can say that when both the derived class and the base class contain a constructor function, then the base class constructor is executed first. Clear this point here? First of all we need to construct the constructor function in base class. If you have the constructor function in base class, then sure we are going to construct such constructor function in derived class also here, and it is compulsory for the derived class to pass, that means create the object in derived class and pass argument to the base class constructors here. And laterwards I said when both classes, maybe the base class and derived class, have a constructor function, then which constructor function is going to execute first? The base class constructor is executing first, then the constructor in the derived class is executed. Clear this point here? And simply we can say that since the derived class have the responsibility. So what's the responsibility of the derived class? It is the responsibility of the derived class to supply the initial value to its base classes. How it going to supply the initial value? Why? Because we know that the object are going to create by using the derived class, not the base class. After creating the object here, the derived class pass argument to the, that means whatever the value is there, pass to the base class constructor. So it is the responsibility of the derived class to supply the initial value to its base classes. Clear this point here? To its base classes here. Or finally we can say that the constructor of the derived class here receive the entire list of values as its argument and pass them on to the base class constructors. Clear this point here? So we can say that the derived class here receive some of the entire list of values here and laterwards pass them on to the base class constructors. Okay, here the base class constructor in the order in which they are executed, or in the order in which they are declared in the derived class. How it going to pass the value, how the object we are going to declare in our derived class, like that only it going to pass the value one by one to the base class constructor. How we are going to declare in the declaration manner, we are passing the value to the base class constructors. Clear this part here? So this is the most important note about our constructor in the derived class. If you have just only one base class, then there is no problem. One base class is there means sure we are going to declare the object by using the base class only. But also when you have any constructor in derived class, so constructor in derived class means sure we are going to apply the concept of inheritance. What's the concept of inheritance? By using one class we are going to construct the another class, the new class. So where you are going to create the object, that means maybe you are applying the concept of inheritance by using the base class. We are not going to create the object by using the derived class. Okay, in derived class we are going to create the object here, and after creating the object it is the responsibility of the derived class to pass argument to the base class constructors here. And after passing the arguments, first of all which constructor is executing first? First of all the base class constructor is going to execute first, then the constructor in the derived class going to execute. And how the derived class pass the argument to the base class constructor? In the order in which they are declared in the derived class. How they are declared, like that in the manner only it going to pass argument to the base class constructor. Now let's see one simple example of our use of single inheritance, that means the constructor in the derived classes. So we can say the use of a constructor in single inheritance. We know that class is the keyword, base class is the our old class, existing class name, and later opening of the floor bracket. And we know that why? Because we can use private or protected. Clear this one? And after the protected I used the colon. Clear this part here? And you should write the correct spelling of the protected, private and public every time. So in this example instead of the private I used the protected. Okay, why? Because we know that the private and protected both are similar. And later next one public. Why? Because we know that whatever the constructor function is there or normal member function, everything going to declare by using the access specifier, that is the public. So I am using, and also we know that whatever the name we are using for the class name, the same name applying to our constructor name here. So the base class, that means here it is the example. So maybe AB, if you are using the as a class name, then AB, the same constructor name going to apply here. So base underscore class open close, but no any arguments are there. Okay, in this example. So this is a call or the comment line we can write as the base class constructor. Okay, and some of, because it is a simple example, just I want to tell or I want to show about the base class constructor and the derived class constructor. So opening of the floor bracket, closing of the floor bracket, and one more floor bracket with the semicolon, that means we are going to terminate the base class definition. And after the termination of the base class definition, the new class going to construct by using the syntax of the defining derived class. So what's the syntax of the defining derived class? Class is the keyword and derived class name, correct here? So derived underscore class, and later next one colon, and after that visibility mode. That means in this example also I want to access the feature of the public base class site here. So the visibility mode I used as the public after the colon, and later next one base underscore class here, and after that opening of the floor bracket. And we know that the derived class not only inheriting the feature of the base class, the derived class also contain its own additional feature also. So some of the additional feature, that means by using member data. So in our member data we can use private or protected, both are same. Okay, protected colon, and public. Why? Because in this example I used the constructor function in our base class. If you have the constructor function in base class, then sure you are going to declare such constructor function in derived class also. So this is called as the, and what's the name we used for the derived class? The same name is applicable for our derived class, constructor. So we can say that derived underscore class open close. So this is called as the derived class constructor, and some of the line going to apply as a code. And finally one more, flower bracket semicolon. Okay, kya? How the base class definition going to terminate, like that only the derived class definition also going to terminate. Clear this point here? So this is the meaning about our the constructor in the derived classes. Clear this point? The constructor in the derived class. And the last concept of this chapter is called as the destructors in derived classes. Why? Because we know that the constructor means it's going to create the object, it going to create, correct? No, kya? The constructor, it is a function, and that initializing the value to the objects here. So this is the meaning of the constructor. Now what's the meaning of the destructor? Whatever the function we constructed by using the constructor function, such function or such a special member function going to destroy by using this special member function. The name of this special member function is called as the destructors. Okay, now we are not in the concept of the constructor in the derived classes. Now our concept is the destructor in derived classes. As we know that, why? Because some of the note I already said in our constructor in derived classes. Now some important note in our destructor in the derived classes. If constructors are called down the line, that is from how we are going to call, that means maybe we know that. Why? Because if the base class have a constructor function, then derived class should have some of the constructor function, correct? No, kya? And where the object going to create by using the derived class, and the derived class pass argument to the base class constructors. That means the constructor in the base class is executed first, correct? Here that means here first of all we are going to call the base class constructor, maybe the derived class passing argument to the base class constructor, but also first of all we are going to call the base class constructors here. So we can say that the constructors are called our down the line, that means base class to the derived class. Okay, when you are going to execute, that means, or when you are going to call, first of all we are going to call or execute the base class constructor, then the constructor in the derived class are going to execute here. So you should remember, that means the constructors are called down the line, that is from base class constructor to the derived class. Okay, the base class constructor to the derived class, but the such destructors are called just in the reverse order. So when you are going to destroy the constructor function, first of all you need to destroy which destructor function here. First of all, that means it going to call just in the reverse order. The order is, that is from the derived class up to the base class. First of all we need to destroy the derived class. Okay, kya? The derived class object, later we are going to destroy our base class constructors. Clear this point here? So again I want to tell about the destructor in derived class. When you are going to call, first of all because we already know the derived class pass argument to the base class constructors, correct? No, kya? But first of all when you are going to call, the base class constructor are going to call first, then the derived class constructor going to call here. But when you are going to destroy the constructor function, first of all we need to destroy the constructor function by using the derived class. Okay, first we need to destroy the constructor function by using the derived class here, then it going to destroy our base class constructors. Why? Because we know that the derived class passing argument to the base class constructors here, so then it going to call here. So finally, lastly, our destructor in derived classes, the constructors are called base to the derived class, but destructors are called just in the reverse of the our constructors, that is called as the derived class up to the base class. Thank you.